I've got no idea when I first saw this painting of people who look like little tin toys on a merry-go-round, but I do remember I went to London to the Tate Gallery, and it would have just been the Tate, not Tate Britain, because it's that long ago that Tate Modern didn't even exist. So long that I reckon if I found the belt that was holding up my trousers that day, it probably would struggle now to fit around my neck. It was last Thursday. But of course it wasn't. It was a long time ago when I was at a posh school, on an outing, probably feeling a bit bored, dull as ditchwater this, but then suddenly this one painting grabbed my gaze and it wouldn't let it go. So this is the first time a genuine go-to-auction, I know what I like, piece of art had caught my attention. So it seemed obvious to me that this should be the one that kicks off this little project. Especially now, as when I look at it, I'm not that bothered with the merry-go-round. And that's another reason to include it, because with art, what tickles your fancy one day might smack you on the backside on another, and vice versa. And that's what's brilliant. Art doesn't stand still, nor do we. People change, and what we like and what we're drawn to does as well. So when I look at Mark Gertler's merry-go-round with today's goggles on, I see it as a bit twee, which means I'm an idiot, because this picture is anything but twee. Gertler said that working on this painting made him feel ill. He refused to share it with anyone as a work in progress, writing, "I'm working very hard on a large and unsaleable picture." Why unsaleable? Because at a distance, this looks like something that might be printed on my daughter's pyjamas. He painted it between May and September 1916, the midpoint of the Great War. Not so cool because it was a brilliant war everyone loved, but this was the war to end all wars, the war version of Donald Trump. And at that time, Gertler lived near London's Hampstead Heath, where in the months before he began work on this, there was a fair held on behalf of wounded soldiers. Now, he would have seen men in uniform who were mentally and physically damaged buying candy floss. And what Gertler, who's just 25 at the time, is trying to show us is how disconnected these things are. That these guys are laughing on the GGs while somewhere their best friend's corpse is buried in the mud. These are the distractions and diversions we use to turn a blind eye to what's going on. And it came at a point when the government's propaganda machine, trying to sell the war, began to be questioned and challenged. So the more you look at this painting, the more disconcerting it is. You know, are these fairground screams of pleasure or horror? The perspective is like that you get in a hall of mirrors. Those mad expressions locked on their faces. The clouds like the sky's about to fall in. It's a fever dream. It makes you as giddy as those people on the ride. Not that anyone at the time picked up on that. It wasn't seen as serious, but more something that would make a nice poster. The Sunday Times wrote that it would look good on the walls of a restaurant. Well, poor old Gertler. He was a staunch pacifist. This was an important piece. You know, one gallery refused to show it because Gertler was a known conscientious objector. In fact, he did go to sign up for the war, trembling in front of the recruitment officer, but he was turned away because his parents were Polish, like really Polish. He only spoke Yiddish up to the age of 8. So he was always something of an outsider, a bit of a misfit. And he didn't have a personality that helped. He had a massive ego, no sense of humour, self-obsessed. He said, "I can never set out to please. My greatest spiritual pleasure in life is to paint just as I feel impelled to do at the time. To set out to please would ruin that process." I mean, even at Slade Art School, he was considered too serious, too intense. And at art school, that's really saying something. I mean, he was good looking, he's passionate, and he was randy. He ran around with every literary and artistic name you could think of from that time. People like D.H. Lawrence and Virginia Woolf. Actually, Woolf described him as hard as a cricket ball and as tightly rounded and stuffed in at the edges. He sounds a lot of fun, doesn't he? But boy, oh boy, was he talented. I mean, look at this 1911 painting of his mother. And then look at how he found and developed a style. Here in The Violinist, a year later, 1912, and then a year after that, this picture of his brother Harry holding an apple. Even now, I think these are so modern. His Queen of Sheba from 1922, that could sit alongside a Beryl Cook. But if Gertler was evolving, his audience tastes weren't. So while he had a productive and successful 1920s, sales began to fall away a decade later, by which time he'd also developed tuberculosis. Just like I said at the start, what you like one day, you may not like the next. People change, but that was all too much for Gertler. He committed suicide in his studio, aged just 48. And how did the man who avoided the battlefields of France do for himself? Gas. That's why the merry-go-round is anything but twee. What a cheerful way to kick things off.